Are you ready to make friends with your inner squasher? Strange question? Possibly. What is an inner squasher? How do you make friends with it? And why would you want to bother making friends with something that sounds a bit messy? Well, listen up. Because if you are human, at times you are holding yourself back. And it is a form of what I call self-squashing. And it's just putting the brakes on that full joy, impact, and growth that you could be enjoying. So, how do you get through that self-squashing stuff? You figure out what's going on. So, yes, you need to make friends with your inner squasher. This episode is a little dive into what your inner squasher is saying to you and how, by making friends with it, you can give it a good talking to, quite frankly. Make friends with it first, though. That's important. I'm Tricia Lewis, the host of Self-Belief Unsquashed, where we're really just trying to unsquash all your joy, impact and growth and squash all the sort of self-doubt stuff. It's human, so we just need to keep an eye on it, and that's what we're doing. And in this episode, we're going right back to basics. What is self-squashing? What's going on? And how can we kick it into touch a little bit? So basically, your inner squasher is the bit of you that's saying, don't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. That's not going to work out well. That's going to be embarrassing. Anything could go wrong. Why risk it? Don't do it. No, you're going to look stupid. And your unsquashed you is desperately trying to say, I want to do it. I really think I can do this. This will be good for me. Yes. So that's a bit of a blow, isn't it, really? And that inner squasher is very, very powerful. So there's no point in just saying, I'm just going to ignore it. No, like all these things, it just doesn't work like that. You actually need to go full on in to making friends with it. In other words, it's the self-awareness bit, isn't it? Everything starts with that, really. And the more you can recognize when your inner squasher is kicking off, the more you can say, whoa, I know what you're doing here. I'm not having it. So, what kind of situations are you likely to be in when you find yourself self-squashing? Because this inner squasher, and it's quite good to think of it as an actual person inside your head, this inner squasher is in control, basically. What kind of situations? Well, it could be literally some kind of physical challenge. I have recently taken up climbing, and although I've got better and better and braver indoor, when it comes to real rock climbing, I am a complete wuss, quite frankly. And that is probably one of the greatest moments of me feeling just plain fear. Fear of what? Fear of hurting myself. So this is quite a basic one, isn't it? This is physical pain that you're trying to avoid. But there's actually a little subtle nuance to that as well, because there's also another fear that is kicking in situations where you are potentially going to challenge yourself physically. And that is fear of failure, fear of giving in to the fear. Does that make sense? And actually, when you feel that, you turn in on yourself, like I did recently when I was taken to this really scary looking quarry, which apparently is great for rock climbing. And my very experienced husband was all, enthusiastic about the whole thing. And I just took one look at it, and I'd done this long walk to get to it. And it was very beautiful countryside. And I'd convinced myself, I'd done a whole inner monologue thing, a whole visualization, I'd done all the right things. I'm going to be brave. If only for Steve's sake, I'm not going to faff about. I'm going to get on with this. I know I can do this. I can do the indoor stuff. It's really not that much different. You're on a rope. There's not huge, you're going to do this. And I'd done all that. And I took one look at this quarry, and my whole being just seized up. I went into a total sort of fight, flight, freeze kind of mode. And in fact, I started crying. And that's a sort of almost panic attack-y type thing. It's certainly fear. Nobody was going to make me do it. The only person that was going to make me do it was me. Technically, I'm in control of me. So what was I scared of? I think a lot of it was actually, I'm scared of failure. I'm scared of the fact that I can't take control of this slightly irrational, but also irrational fear that has taken hold of me. I'm cross with myself. Why can't I motivate myself? Why didn't all that talk I did to myself work? I'm fearful that I'm giving in to the fear. And the inner squasher loves that. It sort of spots that fear and it spots that sense of self-doubt that you're beginning to spiral into, and it just feeds it. Yeah, you are a bit useless, aren't you? Yeah, you are a bit of a wimp. You couldn't even climb trees when you were young. Of course, you're not going to want to hurt yourself. I mean, you might scratch yourself on a rock a little bit. And yeah, it's not a good feeling. So that's one kind of situation. Obviously, it doesn't have to be rock climbing. It could be anything that is a physical challenge, going on a run, doing a marathon, taking up gymnastics, anything. But that's quite an obvious one, I suppose. However, there are other situations where the inner squasher has a whale of a time. Let's look at some of those. Number one, public speaking. Ta-da! Anyone who has been given a challenge to get up and do any form of public speaking, from doing a speech at a wedding to introducing somebody at an event to doing a full-blown talk on stage, will have had a sense of the inner squasher coming in to play, because it's a bit scary. And you can very easily find yourself saying, I can't do this. This isn't me. I'm not good at this kind of thing. Other people do it really well. I'll just mess up. So what is working here? What is the inner squasher feeding on? It's feeding on your sense of not being good enough. It's feeding on your fear of being a disappointment. That one actually is, if you are quite good, then you have a fear of being a disappointment, because you know that people's expectations of you are quite high. So see the subtlety there? But it could also just be a fear of rejection. There's nothing worse than that idea that people are going to be talking behind your back saying, oh, gosh, that was a bit rubbish, that speech, wasn't it? Or, do you see the way she did that introduction of that event? Yeah, somebody else could have done that a lot better. Nobody's necessarily going to do that, but you've made up your mind that that's how it's going to be. You're going to be just thought of as being useless. And you just give that to your inner squasher to have an absolute heyday with, because it will now try to think of past occasions where you perhaps haven't completely succeeded in some kind of public speaking challenge. It will exaggerate those. It will make you focus on the tiniest little criticism that you once received 15 years ago at school. It will do all of that. And I'd just like to remind you that the inner squasher is you. So you are basically in control of this. It's good to think of it as almost a separate entity that is doing this stuff, but ultimately you've got to realize that, oh, hang on, that is me. I am in the driving seat here. I can recognize what my inner squasher is doing and do something about it. What other situations could there be? Maybe you want to launch some new product as an entrepreneur, or just as a small business owner who perhaps is branched out a little bit, making a slight change. Maybe you're employed and you're promoted and you're in a slightly different scenario at work, and all of it comes flooding in, all of that self-doubt, all of the inner squasher's voice saying, I don't really think you're up to this. This is something that I think you should avoid because other people do this better. You're going to look a bit silly, aren't you, doing this because you haven't really got the expertise to do this, and etc. Squashing your joy, your impact, your growth, because you're going to explore. You're not going to be perfect immediately, but no, your inner squasher's not having that kind of level of conversation. It's just going straight in for the kill. No, don't do this. Back out now before you make a fool of yourself. We could go through a long list of all the situations, but the core thing is make friends with this pesky inner squasher. Unless you understand what is going on when you have these various slightly inexplicable emotional responses to challenges, then you won't be able to pick it apart and start dealing with it. So, for instance, going back to the rock climbing situation, I recognized what was going on. I was falling into this spiral, and I was actually saying things like, I'll never be any good at rock climbing. In fact, I don't even know why I'm climbing at all. I'm not that good at it. I'm a bit of a wimp. I always have been. This is silly, a waste of time. Don't ever take me near a rock again. I was doing all that total exaggeration stuff, but I spotted it. I spotted that inner squasher, and I said, whoa, whoa, hang on a minute. Let's think this through step by step. Yes, there's something more scary about rock than lovely coloured plastic holes on a wall inside. But fundamentally, you've spent 2.5 years building up some skills. By the way, when I'm saying this, apply it to whatever you like, because the same basic tenet applies. You've spent this time building up some skills. You're still building, you're still growing, but you have actually got some capabilities, haven't you? And you remember how nervous you were when you first started and how much you've improved, got braver with competence, basically. It's just that you've done it over and over again. Well, yes, with the rock, you are less experienced, so you need to build that practice up step by step. So don't run away from it completely. Just make sure you're doing little steps. I don't mean literally, I mean, easier routes. And yes, you could scrape yourself a little bit on that rock, but you've got a really good belay partner who's not going to let you fall. So the most you're going to do is have a tiny little graze on your elbow or something. And remember when you were a kid, that was just kind of common everyday stuff, wasn't it? You're not going to break anything. I'm saying this, by the way, obviously things can go wrong in anything, so warning, do take care when you're rock climbing. But the point is, I just dissected it, and then I thought, all that is happening here really is that you are seeing a dark, slightly spooky looking thing, and your whole sense of environment is being challenged. It's not such a friendly environment. But I turned and I looked at the view, and the view was of sea and hills and sand, and it was beautiful. And the sun was shining. And then I thought, right, well, let's take that into the picture. And then I looked at my belay partner and I thought, this guy would not put me in danger. He's going to make sure I'm only doing something that is well within my capability. And then, and this was the thing that really, really messed with my inner squasher, really told it to go take a hike, I said to myself, you know from previous experience how good you are going to feel if you don't give in to this inner squasher. If you believe in yourself just a little bit more, stop all the negative talk, and actually just go for it. You might not get to the top of this. By the way, it was a very easy climb. But it doesn't matter, does it, if you've tried? And I did. And actually, once I started, I was in the same mode as I am indoor. I was concentrating on the next foot, the next hand, the next move, and it was cool. And I got to the top. I did some very odd things about coming down, and I spent about 10 minutes on a ledge, not being able to put my thing back and actually be lowered down. But you don't need to know about that. I got through it, and boy, did I feel good. And boy, did I feel in charge of that inner squasher. It was like sitting in a little corner somewhere crying, my inner squasher was, because I defeated it. So that's a good little visualization. Apply it to any of those other situations and more. The main point is make friends with your inner squasher before you have any attempt at trying to sort it, because you won't know what you're sorting if you don't get right on in there. Put everything out, as I say, on the forensics table. It's quite intriguing, isn't it, this unsquashing stuff? So if you want to know more, go to trishalewis.com. There's all sorts of resources there and links to my book, The Mystery of the Squashed Self, and my TEDx talk, Beware the Self-Squashing Prophecy. You see there's a bit of a link going on here. Stay curious and unsquashed.